All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Smith, and I'm a marketing professor at the Tilburg University in the Netherlands. I was teaching consumer behavior at Ohio State for 6 years before I moved here about 6 months ago. And I'm really excited to share this class with you today. I call it the Consumer Behavior Insights for Success and Happiness. And the idea of this class is that there are a lot of insights that you learn from studying consumer behavior as long as I have, which is 12 years or something full time, which have implications not only for how good you are at formal business marketing type of roles, they also have a lot of implications for how good you are in general, right? There are a lot of researchers who are doing great research, who are really devoting their lives to giving us a better understanding for how to be happier, how to make better decisions, how to achieve our goals, how to be healthier, how to have better relationships. And it's crazy to me that we never really learn this stuff in our formal education. You know, you've probably been a student something like 15 years as you're watching this video, and you've learned quite a lot about history and calculus, and I would say shockingly little about the really good research of how to be happier and how to make better decisions and so on. And so I think consumer behavior class is a great place to teach this, but I think it can exist in any class. And so I'm glad you're here with me. And so our agenda here is we'll have 4 videos for how to make better decisions, how to achieve your goals, how to improve your relationships, how to be happier. All of these will be based on hard science, but also I think I am aiming to have a practical approach to all of these such that they're actually useful and potentially helping you do these things. So let's get into it with decision making. So quick background, we have basically a pretty good understanding. Everyone who has studied decision making has come to roughly the same conclusion. And that conclusion is that we have 2 ways as humans of thinking, judging things, and of making decisions. The first is system 1, which is fast, heuristic, intuitive, and hot thinking, where we basically trust our gut. But we also have a slower, more systematic, more reflexive, cold system of thinking, of judging, of making decisions, where we kind of slow down and reason things out. Heuristics are a big part of decision making, and they're basically rules of thumb. And so heuristics, to a very great degree, lie in system 1, in this fast thinking. We need heuristics to get by because we have to make so many decisions, and it's impossible to really cold, conscious, reason things out all the time. But the problem with heuristics is that they sometimes produce biases, which are systematic, predictable mistakes, instances in which we're not just wrong, but predictably and systematically irrational and biased in the same way. Researchers have discovered quite a lot of these. And so if you go to this link, you can see a Wikipedia list of cognitive biases. There are hundreds. It's fascinating reading. All of the ways in which people are not just making mistakes, but making the same systematic mistake in the same way. And so to have a practical understanding of decision making, one that can actually improve our decisions, I think the best approach would be to try to understand when shouldn't we trust our gut, right? Under what situations should we really slow down and reason things through, because our fast system 1 thinking is likely to be biased or systematically wrong in this situation. And if we can recognize some of these instances and say, okay, this is one of those times in which I can't trust my gut, I really have to slow down and figure it out, I think that can allow us to make better decisions and thereby better achieve our goals. When we understand these biases, I think you have to start with the beginning, the mother of all of these biases, which to me is the idea that you can't trust your gut in any situation where there is something you want to believe, right? And this happens all the time. There's often a conclusion or a decision that would make us a little happier in some way. And so we're going to be systematically biased in favor of that positive judgment or decision. The classic example of this is a self-positivity effect, overconfidence effects, better than average effects, Dunning-Kruger effects. All of this basically says that people think they're a little better at things than they actually are, which makes sense in this framework, right? We want to think we're good at thinking things that we want to think. Thinking I'm pretty great is something I want to think, and so I'm going to be systematically irrational in terms of my tendency to think that. And there's some amazing statistics here. 65% of people think they're above average in intelligence. 93% of people think they're above average at driving. 87% of MBA students think they're above average at their academic abilities. I think it's an even higher number for MBA students who think they're above average at their social skills. And even bigger, 94% of professors in one sample believe that they were above average in teaching ability. Related ones are, I'm overconfident. I think I'm more likely to be able to, perform this video on Zoom the first time than I actually am. I don't think I'm likely to get diseases because, of course, I'm awesome, and it would make me feel bad to believe that I would catch a disease. And so I'm really good at thinking, I'm not going to get cancer. I'm not going to get divorced. I could ask all of you watching this, what's the likelihood that you'll get divorced? Most of you aren't going to say 50-50, which is a sign of a bit of a bias. We are particularly likely to be biased at these things when it's something we're actually bad at. So we have this idea that the people who are most wrong about their abilities are the people who are worst at something. This is, I think, a huge problem in the world, where the most confident people are also the most biased. But it makes sense, right? If you think about it from a perspective of how good am I at grammar, the skills that it takes to be good at grammar are the same skills that it takes to judge whether one is good at grammar. And so if I lack these skills, I'm going to be bad at grammar, and I'm also going to be much more overconfident about my grammar abilities than I actually am. And so this is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, the idea that not just are we overconfident in how good we actually think we are, but that's especially true if we're bad at things. So any time in which your gut is saying, I'm good at this, I did great, I'm safe from this disease, I'm awesome, I got this, in this disagreement where me and this other person see things differently, I am the one who is right. In all these situations, your gut is leading you astray, and it's a good time to kind of slow down and reason things out. A related idea here is the planning fallacy, the tendency to underestimate the time, costs, and risks of future action, and at the same time overestimating their benefits. The basic idea of the planning fallacy is you can ask a whole bunch of people, hey, what's a time in which it's 50% likely that you'll be done with this project you're working on? And what's a time in which there's like a 99% likelihood that you'll be done? And when you actually find when these people finish their project, you'll find that very few of them are done by that 50-50 mark that they've set, and often less than half of them are done by the time at which they said there's a 99% likelihood that they'd be done. And so we've got our gut saying this is going to work out awesome, I'm going to nail this, it's all going to be perfect, and your gut in these cases is wrong. And there's research that actually says that really slowing down and thinking about obstacles, thinking about the things that might lie in our way, leads to not just more accurate estimates of like when you'll be done and how much this thing will cost, it also actually leads you to be more likely to achieve this goal. So anytime in which your gut is like, yes, this is going to be great, it's all going to go according to plan, there's a good chance it won't. Slow down, think about those obstacles. Next is the idea of the sunk cost effect. Again, our gut wants to say, hey, I've made awesome decisions in the past and I should keep going on this path that I'm on. But in these cases, the gut is often wrong. So the classic example of a sunk cost effect would be something like this. You've paid $20 for a concert ticket. The ticket is non-refundable and non-transferable, but something else has come up that you would rather do that night. Do you still go to the concert? I've asked this question to probably around 1,000 people in classrooms, and I find that about half of them say, yeah, I'd still go to that concert. But if you think about it, that's irrational. This is a sunk cost. The $20 is spent either way. Mathematically, you could say it exists on both sides of the equation, so it factors out. It's irrelevant. What you are left with then is, would I rather go to the concert, or would I rather do the thing that I would rather do? The $20 is sunk, it is gone, it is equal across these two opportunities. Do the one you would rather do. This is something a lot of people get wrong, and it's something even that organizations get wrong, right? I can make $5 million on this and it'll be a $3 million investment, let's do it. We invest $1 million or $2 into it and we realize it's not going to make 5, it's going to make 3. It's not going to cost 3, it's going to cost 6. Do we want to like invest $4 million more for something that's going to make 3 million? The answer is definitely no, we don't. But what we say is, well, we've already invested this much money and maybe it'll work out. And if we dropped out now, all of that would be wasted. And so we continue with this bad course of action. We chase bad money with good money because of this sunk cost effect. So here, when your gut is saying, I'm on the right track, keep going, I should do it, or else all of that work or money or time would be wasted. I should eat this food on my plate because I paid for it. I should continue this book because I bought it and started it. I should continue this relationship. I should continue this career path because if I stopped now, all of my investments would be wasted. In these cases, your gut is wrong. Make the decision based on, from this point in time, which of these outcomes have better opportunities and costs. The next one here is the confirmation bias, the tendency to see what you expect to see or want to see. And so here we have, I think, a pretty good figure where we have objective facts, we have what confirms your belief, and then we have the shaded green area in the middle of what you see. And I think this figure is actually too generous because we see a tremendous amount of things which are not objective facts, but which do confirm our beliefs and we accept them. This is basically what fake news is. So the confirmation bias is huge, right? How we do this is through these selective defense mechanisms, which are selective exposure, selective attention, selective comprehension, and selective retention. So what we mean by selective exposure is that people get to choose where they get their information from, and you're likely to engage in selective exposure such that you choose information sources who are likely to give you information that you agree with. And this is a huge story today. We have an unprecedented control over our information. And so many of us choose to watch a, for example, news source which is fairly politically biased in the favor of our existing political opinions. We can unfriend people on Facebook who say things that we disagree with. And so we can end up living in a bit of a bubble where all of the information that we choose to expose ourselves to is confirming our existing beliefs and values. And this confirmation bias has a major consequence of political polarization. If I can choose to get more and more of my information in places that are going to support my existing political values, I'm going to become more polarized. And so we see these very strong trends towards increasing polarization politically, which I think are because of our tremendous ability to control our information samples. Selective attention is related. If something's in front of me and I might disagree with it, I still don't have to pay attention to it. And a big one here is selective comprehension. Give me some messages that suggest that I'm right, and I'm like, yep, this source is smart, yep, this all makes sense, yep, this news channel that I've never heard of probably really has it together and is something I should trust. If you give me that same information source and have them disagree with how I want to feel, then I'm going to be much more likely to kind of counterattack it, to attack the source, to counter-argue it, and so on. So people are really, really good at engaging in selective comprehension. And a consequence of this is that in an argument, even under the best case scenarios, even with both sides of this as a disagreement, listening to each other and calmly presenting their opinion in this fact-based way, most people come away even more confident in their existing opinion. Because selective comprehension, you're just counter-arguing everything that disagrees, reinforcing all of your reasons and being more and more confident. Finally, we have selective retention. We actually can forget things that might make us feel bad or wrong. So anytime what your gut is saying, I was right, I'm good, I understand this, this information is definitely wrong because I disagree with it, these are times which your gut is likely to be systematically biased. So I have a nice little figure here. This is from the website I use in my course, which is striveforgrowth.com. And what we have here is basically the idea that consistent information is really good at entering our brain or our internal model, our understanding of the world, where discrepant information, which suggests we might be wrong, gets screened out through these selective defense mechanisms. And so very little information that suggests that we're wrong enters our understanding of the world. And this is a problem because we make decisions and behaviors based on our internal model. And if we are purposefully dropping what should be useful information, then we are going to be systematically ruining or systematically biasing or systematically undermining our information sample, our understanding of the world, which is going to lead to bad decisions. And once you factor in those decisions, those overt behaviors, those actions that are driven by your understanding of the world, you see a similar effect. We're really good at learning from rewards. I have an understanding, I perform an overt behavior in accordance with this understanding, and the world is like, yep, that worked out pretty well for you. You get a reward, you get the thing that you wanted to do, that behavior was designed to achieve, get positive feedback, and you're likely to do that same thing again, right? We're really good at learning from our successes. But if my internal model is wrong and I perform a bad behavior and I don't get the interview, or the date goes poorly, or anything else, we could call that a punishment. And we should learn from that. Handle this interview differently next time. But with this punishment, we have these fight or flight reactions to threats. We fight, we flight, we counter argue or withdraw any sort of information suggesting that we're wrong, which leads us to not learn from our mistakes, which leads us to repeat them. And so we have these kind of two systems which are complementing each other to make us really bad at recognizing times in which we're wrong. And so we're forced to keep repeating the same mistakes. So a consequence of confirmation bias then is less learning. We're not doing a good job of learning when we're mistaken, which is basically the definition of learning. We would also obviously see someone who is engaging in a lot of confirmation bias to have increased confidence. Everything that disagrees with me, I counterattack and rule it out and call that source an idiot. Everything that agrees with me, I'm like, yep, I was right all along. Become more and more confident over time. I'm also intolerant of anyone who sees the world differently because I'm baffled how that could possibly be the case. Everything I've read on Fox News suggests that Joe Biden is corrupt and Donald Trump is great. I'm baffled that you might see the world differently, and I'm intolerant of any other differences that we might have, because of course I'm right. We also find ourselves probably relying a lot on habits, engaging in the same behaviors, not being open to new experiences and ideas. And finally, we have the idea that stereotypes can become self-fulfilling prophecies. I have this expectation, and I confirm it, and I say, yep, I was right, based on my understanding of how people of this gender or of this ethnicity behave. I was right, that person does indeed have that attribute. And so, of course, then you become even more racist, even more likely to rely on these category biases of people with this race have these characteristics. And if you look at this list, I think you kind of see a stereotype of maybe like an old person. We all probably know people in our lives like this. They're not learning, they're certain they're right, they're intolerant of anyone who sees the world differently, they're not doing anything new with their life, and to some extent, they're racist. And I would say that this is what will likely happen to all of us if we don't do a really good job of getting over some of these trends towards the confirmation bias. If we can do a better job of opening ourselves up to discrepant information, being able to admit that we might be wrong, trying to process things in a more even-handed manner, I think that is really important so that we don't become like this after many years of confirmation bias. Finally, a few other quick biases. We have the projection bias, which basically says that people are irrationally likely to think other people are really similar to us. They're not. They've had different experiences and different information samples. And so when we say, you know, clearly you're wrong, you should do what I say, what we're kind of assuming is you have the same understanding of this thing as I do. And often people don't. I've heard a quote, I can't judge your decisions because I haven't lived your life, right? People are a consequence of their information samples, of their schedule of reinforcement, of their genetics. They're not like us. They see things differently. They're going to behave differently from us. That's okay. Another one related to this is the spotlight effect. We think people notice us more than they actually do. And so I think that's a good one to keep in mind. Your gut is like, everyone's staring at you. They're not. You're staring at you, but they're not. And they're, you know, you can do your own thing and not worry about it so much. Another one is availability. This is a major one, I think. The idea of availability heuristic is that if it's easy to think of examples, our gut says that lots of examples of this thing exist. And this is a bias when there's other reasons why something might be easy to think of examples of. So we overestimate terrorist attacks, for example, because lots of examples exist in our brain, not because they're so common, but because they're so vivid and memorable and covered by the news. So we think shark attacks are more likely than they are, and so on. Another one is reactance, one of my favorite ones, wanting to do something because it's discouraged. If you put a button in front of me and it says, don't press this button, I'm going to want to press that button. And that's basically just my ego saying, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to reassert my freedom as a way to make me feel better about myself. In these cases, don't trust your gut, slow down. Do you actually want to do this thing? Or are you just falling prey to, someone who's playing hard to get? And finally, we have the 6 biases that underlie all persuasion. This video links to a YouTube video of Cialdini explaining the biases that underlie persuasion. He also wrote a great book called Influence. But the idea is that if you're good at persuasion, you're probably really good at the times in which people's guts are going to make them lean towards saying yes, and then cultivating that situation. And that's basically what this book is about. If you want to read more about this, I'd recommend Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely, The Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz, or this really nice TED Talk. StriveForGrowth.com, as I said, is the website that I use when I teach in my class. And finally, there's an article by Daniel Kahneman and a few other people where they basically take this approach of understanding biases to make better decisions to a situation where people are giving you a proposal, you're a manager, they're saying, hey, I think we should make this investment or do this thing. And by understanding biases better, it's hard to recognize them in yourself, but it becomes easier, a little more effective to recognize them in other people. So you can say, okay, I can go through this checklist from this article, and I can understand whether this person who is giving me this advice is likely to be capable, engaged in a lot of bias. And if so, I should think things through. So that's that. So that's it for this decision-making class. And the next one I will record is about goals, how to achieve your goals better. All right.